residence permit in 2025, how to obtain the initial one, how to extend the existing one, what changes, what documents are needed for the extension and for obtaining a residence permit. Hello, my name is Alexandra Sokolova. I am a co-founder, director, and practicing licensed realtor at Mersin's real estate agency. Since 2009, I live and work here. I only have practical experience and speak only official information or that about which we had direct experience. Give it a like, let's delve into this topic. So, obtaining an initial residence permit in 2025. What is needed for this? There was a lot of hype, gossip, talks, and so on about reducing it to 100,000. However, no, it remains the same now. We have 200,000 cadastral value in Tapu, accordingly, to obtain a residence permit for the whole family. And by the way, my client received it for 2 years right away, without any questions, examinations, and so on. Watch this video to the end and I'll tell you about the closed areas and what pitfalls you might encounter along the way when obtaining a residence permit. So here we will discuss the initial acquisition of a residence permit. If you are interested, there are 2 possible scenarios here. The first option is, if you already have a top, an apartment was bought earlier, but you never received anything on it, a residence permit. And the second scenario is when you don't have either an apartment or a residence permit yet. But by the way, the second scenario is more logical, it's more understandable. We know the algorithm, and this will lead to a 100% positive result. We guide the client not only in the real estate transaction, buying and selling, but also, of course, in obtaining a residence permit. And the result is obtaining the coveted pink residence permit card. So, what kind of apartment should be chosen to qualify for a residence permit? Well, first of all, the apartment must be in an open district. In Mersin, there are closed districts. I'll list them a bit later. And it must comply with the rule of cadastral value being $200,000. It seems like a simple task, but it's not. Even with expensive apartments costing $300,000 to $400,000, as there are very few of them here, because Mersin is still more affordable housing. On the Mediterranean coast, developers at least show a cadastral value of $200,000. Reluctantly, because there aren't such expensive properties. But I have a great selection of such options for you, where we can buy property significantly below the cadastral value. Well, in particular, we have made a selection for you, checked all the parameters anticipated, all the pitfalls that might exist with these options. These properties are 100% suitable for obtaining a residence permit. I will leave it below in the info box and under the video, so check it out to see which apartment options might be suitable for a residence permit. Apartments are available from individuals, legal entities, Turkish citizens, and foreign citizens. The main thing is to be able to show $200,000 at the top. What's the problem? Why can't it be shown? Because the seller incurs a significant tax, and not everyone, of course, wants to pay it. Therefore, our apartment, or real estate object, residential real estate object, completed construction, of course, must have been owned for more than 5 years, so that the seller does not incur taxes, and I emphasize that we have selected such options. Furthermore, the apartment should be of a good size in a decent area. Why? Because we anticipate such a development of events. Expert evaluations can. An expert evaluation can be requested by Jelkadaris Deris, the Immigration Service. Therefore, your apartment should resemble one that could be worth $200,000. Therefore, an apartment that is 1 + 1, 2 + 1, no matter how cool, beautiful, or fancy they are, they will never pass an expert evaluation for a value of $200,000, even if you show it to the top. 200,000, so don't mess around with this, please be as reasonable and close to reality as possible. The apartment should appear as if it is worth 200,000, even though the market value is half of that. The document package is quite simple. For the owner, it's one set of documents, and for the family, a more extensive set of documents. I'll explain later what this set of documents includes. The second scenario is when we already have the top, but in the new housing, we have never received a primary residence permit here, and it doesn't matter when you bought it. The real estate object will require an appraisal for $200,000. The appraisal must show this amount, which will be difficult. I emphasize that it will be difficult to show. Such a value, that is, the apartment, should be in a good area and should be large in size. Extension of the residence permit in 2025. Possibly, there are no problems with extending the existing residence permit, even if the area has been closed. They continue to extend it for you, but the document package depends on the period when the property was purchased, the real estate was registered, and the date on your tapu. Not when you bought it during construction, not when you signed a contract, but specifically the receipt of the tapu. This date is important. Here we have 4 periods, meaning depending on which period and plus. The basic document package. The first period, starting with the earliest, if it was obtained this year after January 15th of this year, 2025, then we will need the tapu to indicate $200,000. The cadastral value must be like this, and for 2 years you are guaranteed an extension or initial receipt of the residence permit. If the apartment was purchased between October 16th, 2023 and January 15th, 2025, you remember that period when the $75,000 appraisal was canceled, and there was a recommendation for a $200,000 cadastral value. So, if you don't have $200,000 indicated in the tapu, which is equivalent to the exchange rate on the day of receiving the tapu, then you must show an appraisal of $200,000 according to the appraisal. If you designed the tops during the period from April 26th, 2022 to October 16th, 2023, this was a good period when real estate was suitable with an appraisal of $75,000, meaning you need to have an appraisal of $75,000. What does it mean to have it? The appraisal is electronic. The appraisal is in the system. Both the Jalkadaris and the Migration Service can see this electronic appraisal. It's not necessary to make a new one, but there are cases when something gets lost in the system. But unfortunately, this happens, so they might ask you for a repeat appraisal. This is an extra expense, but hopefully your apartment will pass and be appraised by the expert at more than $75,000. And if you bought the apartment a long time ago, specifically before April 26th, 2022, then you're lucky. You don't need any confirmations, valuations, appraisals, proofs, nothing at all. Only the basic set of documents. So, what is the basic set of documents? And it is needed both for extending a residence permit and for initially obtaining a residence permit. So, if it's the owner, that's one story. If it's a family, that's another story. If we only have the owner, then he doesn't need to prepare any documents. In his own country, he should have the money accordingly to buy such property, and he must be here in Turkey. If you are extending a residence permit, you must have access to Edward. This is our equivalent of government services. In Turkey, you must provide a receipt in your name for the last month's payment of utility bills. They usually want either electricity or water. The floor number, which is obtained from the municipality in Belay, Tapu Kedi, is a certificate that confirms you haven't sold the apartment. Naturally, life insurance. Health insurance is mandatory up to 65 years old. The remaining documents include a photograph. Simple documents, yes, meaning a biometric photograph in electronic form, and for the appointment, accordingly, in printed form. At the meeting, by the way, currently very short waiting time from electronic submission to the appointment itself. 1 to 2 days, meaning there are no queues. 4. Residence permits. Therefore, regarding the review of these inspections, the review of these reviews, the review of documents happens quite quickly. My owner, we were processing, I'll tell you the case, we were processing the property in December 2024. One owner was applying a citizen of Russia. No assessments were required from us, although they could have been. But our apartment turned out very elegant, despite the fact that we, out of 200,000, they actually bought half of it, immediately gave it for 2 years. They immediately tell you the result. That is, they tell you to pay taxes, take your fingerprints, and give you a piece of paper with all your personal data, with your photo here. Naturally, all personal data was taken, and the date is immediately indicated, until which you are given. In this case, I emphasize that here we were given 2 years, and at the address, you wait for the postman with a cherished envelope from Geocadarcy, where your residence permit will be. If you have a family, then you need to prepare here. Here, a more extensive set of documents is required, and some documents you must prepare in your own country. In particular, if you are married, then this. A marriage certificate with an apostille. The apostille is done in the country where the marriage was directly registered, and the birth certificate of minor children, accordingly, where the children were born. I emphasize that the apostille is done in the country of issuance. If it's a family, then you will also need a certificate of no criminal record for the owner in your country. Attention, the certificate is valid for 3 months, and it must also be apostilled. If you are in Turkey and are not going to leave anywhere with a certificate, then, of course, you can get this certificate from the consulate of your country. Order and receive it. Order it in advance because the procedure is not quick. If you have a family, you will need a bank statement from a Turkish bank for the last 6 months, and in Turkish lira, you must show the recommended amount for a family is 30,000 lira per month per family member. So, with this amount, there are no questions, and they need to see that you are spending, using it, and so on. In other words, you must actually use this account. What to do if your residence permit has already expired? That is on the back side. I'm yours. Plastic card, your kimlik, the expiration date is shown. When can you apply? Firstly, you can apply no earlier than 2 months before the expiration. Naturally, for an extension, to even submit an electronic application, you must be physically present in Turkey. If you have an extension, you must have access to e-Devlet. Please be careful because e-Devlet passwords can have an expiration date and they might stop working. And you will need to go to the post office again with your valid kimlik, and they will send you the e-Devlet login password to your Turkish number. Therefore, this should be done not at the last moment, but a little in advance. Well, of course, when is the last moment? the last moment, is the day before your residence permit expires. But I emphasize that I do not recommend doing it this way. Start at least a month before it expires. If your residence permit has expired, previously you could do this. Previously, you could leave the country, but for Mersin, this is usually northern Cyprus. Northern Cyprus. It's a 2-hour drive from us. And do a chikishgarish, meaning exit entry, stamp. Leave one day, return the next day, essentially overnight. And commit to applying for a residence permit within 10 days. So no problem. In such situations, you were allowed to enter and you actually applied for a residence permit under the same conditions, depending on the date you acquired your property. So this hatligirish, as it's called, this 10-day grace period was canceled. If your residence permit is expired, you must leave the territory of Turkey. And next time, you can enter only after 90 days. At least after 90 days, and accordingly, apply initially. What does it mean to apply initially? In addition to the basic set of documents, you must provide an appraisal for $200,000. Therefore, please be careful and keep track of the validity of your residence permit. About closed areas. We have last year, in 2004, it closed. Much loved by everyone, TJ area closed, but I draw your attention to the fact that it did not close completely, but they close in the hall because TDJ closed, specifically Deniz Mahallesi, but it's not the entire TDJ. In our tapu, they don't write which mahal, so when purchasing a property, you must clearly trust your realtor to check where and in which mahal the property is located. This property, because if you buy in a closed area, no amount of $200,000 will help you. In the residence permit, the system won't even accept an application in a closed area. So closed areas, there are areas far away from us, which I don't like. The city center of Mersin. This is Acquaintance, don't confuse it with that. Acquaintance, which is the Acquaintance neighborhood, located in Mezitli, is open. Specifically, the Acquaintance district, a large area near the port. But foreigners usually don't consider this option there. That is, it has no access to the beach, not a very interesting area for living. Therefore, we generally leave Acquaintance aside. It remains closed as it was. Favorite areas for our buyers, for foreigners who come to Mersin to live, enjoy, swim in the sea, and take advantage of good infrastructure. In Mezitli, we have Varansar, Yeni Mahallesi, Fadi, Istiklal, Seymemli, closed and in Tis directly, Deniz, Mahallesi, and administratively, it belongs to Erdemli. This is Kiz Mahallesi. These areas are closed for obtaining residency permits for citizens of all countries. Why am I making this clarification? Because there are certain relaxations for Ukrainian citizens and for other foreign citizens. The general rule and the relaxations for Ukrainian citizens are that Ukrainians can obtain a residence permit based on renting property in an open area. Based on purchasing property of any value, no appraisal or cadastral is needed in an open area. They are not required to provide any bank statements. This is also not mandatory for them. Therefore, this practice exists. Obtaining a residence permit is more feasible, but you need to approach this matter very carefully. No, everything. The entire algorithm, have practice in this, have experience, have a good selection of real estate properties so that you like it. We have everything in our commerce. All of this is available. We look forward to meeting you in Mersin. If there are any questions I haven't answered, please write them in the comments below the video. I will be happy to help. There are many individual cases. That is, you just need to understand how your specific situation is structured. Thank you for watching and subscribing. Love you and see you in the next videos. Bye-bye.